Hello everybody, welcome to a meditation on domestic violence and abuse. My name is Tinashe Angeline. Today we are going to be reading a small paragraph from my book Greener Pastures Beyond Mount Abuse that you can find on my website or on Amazon, and my website is www.tinasheangeline.com.au. And today I want to be talking on a page that talks of reflection on my life pre-Australia, and this is going to be on page 23, just a little bit of a paragraph where I say that my understanding of the religious regulations and guidelines was that relations were forbidden unless, of course, you were ready for marriage. Flirting with the opposite sex was not allowed. If you had a relationship with the opposite sex and were involved in flirtatious behavior, you had to confess in front of everyone and get counseling. I, for one, was terrified of even liking the opposite sex, as I was scared of being humiliated in front of not only my family, but the whole congregation at large, which further explains my character in the years of abuse, not knowing how to behave in a relationship, as this would never have been tolerated as a point of discussion in the African culture. I did have crushes on a few boys in primary school like everyone else, but I would not have dared to take it any further. So I was shocked when I came to Perth, when occasionally on the train ride I would see young people in school uniforms holding hands, kissing or sitting on each other's laps. Young people wouldn't dare to behave like this in Zimbabwe unless they had a death wish, even if it wasn't your immediate family disciplining you. An elder person had a right to discipline you. And the reason why today I decided to talk about this particular little paragraph in the book is because recently I was tagged on a post by one of my friends, or my little sister, and she was talking about how someone she knew in Zimbabwe, a young girl, had been told to leave the house because she had got, pregnant, and their father told her, or her family told her, to go back to where she came from. And this is something, when I grew up, I had a lot, that if a girl was late, maybe you've gone to see a boy, or you have gone out with your friends and you came back home late, people were told to go back to where they came from. And I understand that as a parent, they would be upset, and this would be a form of discipline so that you don't do this again, telling you to go back to where you came from. But coming from a child perspective, I don't think a young girl who has come home late expects to get home and be told to go back to where she came from, because at that age you're not even thinking of getting married. And I remember that most of the girls who were told to go back to where they were coming from when they got home late, they were not even pregnant, and some could not even have had intimacy or sex with their boyfriends, but they were just told by their family, go back to where you were, because they've just come home late. As a child, why would parents force their young girls to go back to where they are coming from, even if they have not been intimate? You are just late home, but it doesn't mean that you are ready for marriage, because I'm sure most of the people who have been forced to go back to where they were because they are late were not ready for marriage. So it's basically child abuse. Parents forcing their young children to get into marriages that they are not ready for. And then on the other hand, so you've got parents who are angry and telling their young girls, go back to where you came from because you're home late. And then you have as well boys. I remember particularly someone who is very close to me who passed away. May her soul rest in peace. I loved this auntie of mine. Her boyfriend knew that this is the practice that happens in Zimbabwe of parents. When a girl child is late, they tell you to go back to where you came from, and then you go, basically you're forced into marriage. The boyfriend, she was older, I think she was in her 30s. The boyfriend knew that this is what parents do, and when she went to visit him at his house, she was late, it was coming a bit late, and the boyfriend shut the door, locked the door, and left her. And she slept because it was late at night, so she said she slept like on the couch. And then he came back later. It was too late, it was too dark, she couldn't just go, so she had to sleep in his place. And then early in the morning when it was light, she woke up and she went home. But the guy did not have money to pay for dowry during that time. For him, he was trying to get her to stay and then become his wife. So it's like, as a girl child, we are caught up in two different things. If you come home late, your parents, your family tells you to go back to where you came from. So you're forced, if you were meeting with your boyfriend, because we don't talk about boyfriends or dating, you're forced into a marriage that you're not ready for. And then on the other hand, you've got these boys or young men, or men in particular. Some, they don't want to pay dowry. Some, they just do it because they just want to do it. They want to force you to be their wife, so they lock you inside the house and they leave you, and then they come back later in the night. You're afraid that you can't go back home. So it's like, where does that leave us as women? Where does that leave us as girls? So it's like we have no choice. It's like we have no say. Whatever we say, no one wants to understand or want to know what is going on. This is why I always talk about communication, encouraging families to have conversations, which is very difficult. I've been enjoying having conversations with young people lately, like young married couples. It's absolutely amazing. And I feel so sorry, and I feel really sad for parents or fathers who are never going to have the opportunity to actually enjoy having these kind of conversations with their children. The conversations that I have with young people or young married couples, I would love parents to sit down and have these kind of conversations and be challenged, which is one thing that is very sad in our society or with traditional parenting. And that is sometimes when elders are confronted with issues, things that are happening in young people's day-to-day lives, they don't even want to hear. There is this idea that they think that because they are parents or because they are guardians or they are elders, they don't do any wrongs, which is untrue, because no one is perfect. We all fall short. Even as a parent, there are sometimes you're going to do the wrong thing. You're going to discipline incorrectly because you're human. And there is nothing wrong with you saying, I don't know, or I am sorry, which our society needs so much. And that is why we need to be discussing these confronting, issues. We need to be discussing these discomforting things that are happening in our society, that as girl children or as women, don't put us in corners where we are forced into marriage when we are not ready to be married. And then you realize that so many people, as they get into these relationships where people were not ready, where people, you know, don't even know, because if you were late from your date and then you're told to go back, and this guy is not, probably he didn't even want to marry you, or he's not even ready to marry you, he's also forced to be in a relationship with you, and then domestic violence, family violence, abuse happens because people are just not happy. They are forced into something that they were not ready for. And today I want to talk, I was looking at a word, hypocrite. And hypocrite is a pretender, a deceiver, imposter, phony. Interesting. And I was reading that a hypocritical person, there was an example. The story tells of respectable Ben, for example, who turns out to be a cheat and a hypocrite. And today I just want to challenge our fathers. I want to challenge our grandfathers. I want to challenge men in particular. That growing up, even now it's still happening in many cultures, in many societies, that the girl child is not allowed to date. So then you wonder, so if a girl child is not allowed to date, have a boyfriend, so the boys, who are they having relationships with? Who are they dating? Are they dating themselves, or they are dating these particular girls? So I want to challenge, you know, the fathers, I want to challenge men in society, that most of them, they tell us as girls that don't date, don't have boyfriends. And then the surprising thing is that many of these fathers, many of these men in our homes, even though they tell the girl child not to date and have boyfriends until marriage, but they go ahead and cheat on our mothers. They go ahead and cheat on women in their lives with girls their daughter's age, or who look like the age of their daughters. So it's like you're being a hypocrite. The things that you are trying to say into you are trying to put into your family, that, you know, this is what we say we need to do in this house, those are not the same thing that you are doing yourself. You are doing exactly the opposite. You don't want us to date. You don't want us to be in relationships. For me personally, I would love to have a society, to have cultures where when a young girl and a young boy reach the age of dating, that they would, the first people they would want to tell that they are dating is their family. Because your family is the most, you know, important thing for you, that you would go home, speak to your family that I found someone that I like, and I want to date this particular person, and that person can be welcomed into the home, and then you begin to know each other, so that if something doesn't look right, who would be the best person to encourage you, to show you the right way to date? Your family, your parents. But if you're told don't have boyfriends, don't talk about relationships, how are we going to know as young people what a good relationship is and what is not a good relationship? So it's a challenge to the fathers, to the older generation. We are talking about this, you know, that there is this generation gap between the old and the young ones. How are we going to be able to come back together? It's by having conversations. It's by having confronting conversations. It's by having discomfort conversations with each other. Even if you don't agree with your children, even if you don't agree with what your parents are saying, we need to be able as families to just sit down together and have a conversation. Sometimes it's just a matter of listening. I mean, look at the suicide rate in our society. Why would young people just think there is no way out? No one is listening to me. So if no one is listening to them, where are their families? You hear most parents saying that, you know, we were so close, I thought I knew everything about my child, but are you having the hard conversations inside your house? Are you opening up? Are you leaving that room that there can be these discomforting conversations in your home? Or all you do is just shut, I don't want to hear? Or you just given a smack that, you know, you're disrespecting me? How far, or what do we have to do as young people to be heard? We are just asking, can we have conversations? If I feel like I've reached the dating stage, can I come to my own family and say, I'm having these feelings, I like this guy, and talk at home, but not just hitting and smacking and thinking that hitting and smacking your children is going to bring the answer. So here is my challenge to the men, to the fathers, to the grandfathers in our lives. Can you stop just saying no relationship, no boys, no sex, but open a door of conversation, open a room for conversation, that we can have these conversations where we can talk. If it's because you have made the same mistakes in your young age and you don't want us as girls to go through the same thing, bring those examples. There is nothing wrong with showing your weaknesses. There is nothing wrong with sharing the things that you have done when you were young and saying, look, I made a mistake, I did this when I was young, and this is the reason why I want you to do this, I want you to do this, so that you don't make the same mistake that I made. But just shutting doors on us so that there is no conversation, it's not helping anyone in any way. If the same way the governments are talking about COVID, I mean domestic violence and abuse is one of the biggest viruses in our homes. But because it happens behind closed doors, that's why people are not able to say it out loud as they are talking about COVID. I mean, I would love to be in a society where governments talk about how many women have been killed, how many children have been killed, where how many men have been killed because of the violent people in their homes, so that we can bring awareness. But every time you want to talk about this, it's taboo. Let's not talk about it. Leave people to do what they do behind closed doors. But this is a big virus that is killing people, that is killing families, that is killing young people. We need to be able to speak out on these things. And I talk about in the book, I give an example as well, where, you know, you would see young girls being disciplined openly. You would be so ashamed and embarrassed because you've done flirting. You've been flirting with someone. You would be so ashamed and embarrassed. And like I said before, when I was reading in the paragraph that I was reading, I was so afraid to have a boyfriend that I'm not surprised I found myself in the abusive relationship that I was in, because I could not talk about boyfriends and dating. So it's something you just begin doing things out of whatever comes, goes, and you just go with the flow. But life should not be like that. We need to be taught right. The same way we are taught to have manners, to have respect, we are taught education, whatever we are taught, we should also teach healthy relationships. But let's not be hypocrites. And on the other hand, not just men, women, our mothers, our aunties, our grandmothers, they also say the same thing. I don't know if it's because they hear from the fathers that, you know, I don't want dating, and then they speak the same language that, you know, don't date. I don't want you to have boyfriends, no sex before marriage, and all this. It would be nice in a perfect world where you just get to probably in your 20s and then you just bring a guy, oh, you know, this is my boyfriend, we are getting married tomorrow, and then 2 years time or in a year's time we are having a baby and all these things in a perfect world. But we don't live in a perfect world because we are not perfect people. Things happen, and there should be room in families to forgive, to be open to different things. The same thing, mothers would never tell you the reason why they don't want you to date or be in relationships. Tell us mistakes that you have made, what you have learned. Give us examples so we can be able to relate. But not just say, if you bring a boyfriend, if you have a boyfriend, if you do this, I'm going to kick you out, I'm going to beat you, I'm going to, all these threats. And then as we grow up, even as younger girls, we are so fearful, we are so scared, we don't have a voice. We want to raise young women who are bold, who are fabulous, who have a voice, who can speak their mind. The same way guys are allowed to do whatever they want to do. They can speak out as much as they want to do. We as women as well, we want to have that voice. It's true that the truth sets us free. It will set so many families free if people were honest and having good communication inside the homes. And that is why I encourage, and I have encouraged a lot of young people to move out of their homes. Because let's be real, a toxic relationship is toxic, even if it involves your own blood relations. Respect is earned and it is not commanded in the homes. As families, we need to encourage conversations. We need to encourage opening up and being free. Not that children can be free to speak to anyone outside, but at home, it's just, you just talk about just the small things, but things that actually concern you or that, you know, have a big impact on your life, you can't even say it because you're afraid of being beaten. Recently, I was so happy to have a conversation with a young father, and he was talking about how growing up, you know, he had people shouting at home. You know, there was lots of shouting, and because monkey see and monkey do, now he's got his own family. He said he found himself at times speaking louder or shouting at his own young daughter. And then she would say, "You're shouting." And then he would, you know, look at himself and be like, I was shouting, I am shouting. And he said he's trying so much to be aware when he's speaking and when he starts shouting, because he said sometimes he doesn't even want to shout. He doesn't even mean to shout, but because it's learned behavior, it's something that is in him, that he grew up seeing and seeing, so it just comes out naturally. But the one thing that I am proud of is him accepting, because in accepting that something, I should change something and something is not right, that's the first step. Acknowledging that, oh, this is happening, because you find that with the older generation, they would not even accept that they are in wrong. They are perfect. They don't do anything wrong. Their children, it's like they own their children. My children, they have to do what they want. Otherwise, if they don't want, get out. I mean, what is that? What are we teaching the younger children so that even when they have their own children, they still pass the same thing? If you don't like what I'm saying in this house, get out. But that acknowledgement that, oh, my voice, I'm raising my voice, I need to speak calmly. I was so proud. I can't tell you how much I was so happy to hear that. And it gives me hope that with the younger generation, we are learning something. And even the older generation, it's not too late. Because most families, I just feel like parents are just parents because they gave birth to these children. But that bond, that relationship, it's not there. Because people are not giving each other room to be able to learn from one another. You're never too old to learn. There is nothing as being too old to learn. We learn every day. It should be something that we should be open to. So this is me having a cry to our fathers. A cry to the men that we need to change the way we do things. If your child is late, if your girl child is late, allow that room for conversation. Open the door and ask, where were you? What happened? And allow your children to be open, like, I went to catch up with my friends, or I went to meet up with my boyfriend, and I'm sorry, I was running late, and I am late, but I'll do better next time. And it's for the children as well to have that communication, learn how to communicate. Next time, almost everyone has a cell phone nowadays. Send a text message to your family and say, I'm sorry, I had gone here, I'm running late, I'll be there in half an hour. Be open. The truth sets you free. And as well, the parents doing the same thing, being open with your children. Allow them to say their mind, but not just closing the door and saying, just go back to where you came from. So if I'm late from meeting a boy and we're just having lunch or dinner, it means now I'm going to be forced into a marriage. And then you have boys who know that these things happen. So then sometimes when you visit them, they lock you so that you can't go, and then you're late, and then you're forced into another marriage. And then where does that leave us as girl children? I hope that this video can be a challenge, can be encouraging, so that we can stop family violence and abuse, because a lot of people are suffering in homes. It's not even funny. People are going through a lot. And for most people, it's because they were forced into a relationship that was never meant to be. People who are just probably just starting to date, and they don't even know, it was just lust, or it was just nothing. And then you are told, go back. So until next time, this is Tinashe. Have a fabulous